Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. So today's topic is open source risk, secure your open source software stack in 2025. I'm Kenneth Low. So today we share about more on open source and related risk and how do we solve it. Okay, let's get started. Well, in between, if you got any question, please do type in the question or chat box. I will try to answer right away or after the sections. So welcome everyone. So today is talking about open source software. It do powers modern development. There's no one try to develop all the libraries or others from scratch, and yeah. So almost all the development will be using third-party libraries and but these do bring unique security risk because for everyone using it, it doesn't mean it's secure anyway. So that will be risk that you may bring into your software. In today's real world environment, there is some instance that really inject into your open source software supply chain. So let's start. So let's talk about, today we'll talk about the open source risk and have a case study. One of the Python library that have been inject malware code that really bad. Yeah, it just last year. And the challenge of manage between open source software security and how to tackle it with some suggestion, also by using OpenLogic. And that's in the end, we have some best practice for you. So what's the risk? Almost like 90% or more than 90% of modern application is leveraging open source components. Just imagine you have a e-store, online store. The web server more like is open source, right? No matter it's hosted by you or hosted by third parties, very likely it will be a open source server, and the application you written, maybe using Python, maybe using many others, it can be open source. And your JavaScript library, your framework, more or less are open source. So we heavily rely on open source components, even the encryption, SSL, or open source library, right? Well, nowadays attackers are sometimes they will targeting some open source repository that become a very high value attack apparatus, because once they infect a commonly used library, then their code can be distributed and penetrate to many different kind of software to achieve their goal, maybe ransom, maybe PII collection, whatever. So last year we have a PyPI, which is a incident which is highly urgent risk hidden in our dependency. Well, it may still exist, so do check on the versions and others. So how it works. So attacker add a backdoor to a PyPI repository to GitHub. So they gain access to the GitHub, or they, as a member of developers, inject some code to there, and that it has been approved, merged to the mainstream branch. So people, when they pull the most updated versions, it will be upgrade and insert those backdoor. So because there is commonly used library, and that's very difficult for people to, and actually not much people to do it. Of course, highly recommend to do the static code execution scanning and then runtime scanning for every deployment. You should integrate your CI/CD, but at the end of the day, still have many people didn't do that. So there will be a backdoor come with the software library and come into their web server, their application, the internal systems. That's bad, right? So because why it happens? Because the backdoor is inject to the open source library. So when people finish the updates, they will come with the updates and go into the software stack. So we don't have sufficient automated check on all these software. So that will the major cause of having such kind of backdoor inject to our libraries. And most of developers assume the libraries they download from those famous open source library are safe. Of course, it didn't. It's not always being checked or if not checked enough. And people didn't have a visibility to your software execution. If you have a runtime check, you may be able to find there's a backdoor or something bad behavior found on the server, on the source code and the library. So that's why I say you should have a runtime check and static code check for each deployment and publishing. So it will mitigate those kind of problem. So lack of visibility. That's why, because we don't check enough. So the real problem is developers always inherit this risk from many different kind of software, open source software, because they have many dependency. So you cannot simply ignore those software because they are interrelated. You cannot run a single library because usually they have a 10 or hundreds of other libraries that rely on. So we do need to very care of that, but we cannot avoid it because if once you're using open source, it will be there. So code review focus on source and not just third-party packages. So you can scan all the source code because it's open source, right? So you can say scan all the source code, then you will find if there are any suspicious behavior or bad malware or vulnerabilities or loopholes there, so you can fix it. And additional security measures, they may do authentication, authorization, behavioral check. So sometimes it didn't take care of those open source software loophole or backdoor problems. So you have to employ some additional effort to find out those threats and mitigate them. So how do we trust that we don't build ourselves? That's a key question. So we shouldn't trust it. Although it is famous, although it's very familiar with, although it's have long history of no problem at all, but it doesn't mean it always be good because do you know everyone that who build a Python or or PHP or Apache? No, you'll never know all of that because they're maybe just a nickname on the internet. But they do put a very good effort on most of the guys. But so you won't know who and when there will be a bad guy try to do something nasty. So be aware of that. So what should we do? First of all, let me introduce OpenLogic, who is an expert on open source software, a trust provider of commercial support for over 450 open source package. And so they provide support, they provide consultants to help you guys, no matter it's using it or resolving dependency problems, maybe finding alternatives or many others technical support for the open source library and help you to ensure this security, stability, and compliance for the enterprise open source software use. So no matter it's a proprietary software, open source software, there will be also some compliance you have to follow. It doesn't matter, but open source, more or less, you have more responsibility because of third-party paid software, the vendor has certain responsibility to take care of the code and the package or whatever. For open source, that will be yours. Okay, so they have an expert that support engineers for long-term security patching and others. So I will talk more later. So what they do is that one of the gold level technical support. So there's so many icons. I think most of you may familiar with, like Dockers, the progressive code, PHP, Jenkins, yeah, many, Apache, Nginx. Many of them are very, very key component to all your applications, but no one will use all, but there's so many. Yeah, so in case you need support, you need and consultancy, yeah, that should be covered by most cases by OpenLogic. And one more very important thing is that we call it long-term support from OpenLogic. So some open source project may die down or have a new version. So old version will be end of life. One of the very common headache open source stuff is CentOS, which we do have very high penetration rate on CentOS 7. Many people using it, many vendor using it as a component of OS to create a virtual appliance to make it deployment very easy. But some maybe migrate to newer OS, some didn't. So you may have a difficulty to replace it. So OpenLogic give you an alternative from just leave it unpatched or try to upgrade to other OS. OpenLogic can give you updates, patchings for those known vulnerabilities. So after the software is EOL, OpenLogic take up the job to patch it. So make you have much more time to can use the old software and if having patches, and you have buy more time in case you can upgrade, migrate to a newer system. So this is one very commonly asked service from OpenLogic. So besides that, there are a few more things we can do based on the open source software security. So in general, we have to validate the open software package before adopt. So OpenLogic Enterprise Architect can provide some advice to you. Well, everyone knows those major open source project, but in case you need something specific, there may be few different library available. All of them seems active. All of them seems having good review, or some have some problems, some have other problem. So which library we should use? So you can consult the OpenLogic Enterprise Architect to advise you in certain scenario which field project you can make use of, how to combine and integrate it together. So that helps. And very important is a software built from materials, BOM, not just a car have BOM, but software also BOM nowadays. So in order we maintain our open source project is safe and secure, we do need to have a list of project or dependency. So in case there is a vulnerability or there's some security news pop, at least you know it's related to you. Just like the log4j, many things is not related to me because simply you don't handle the log, but your underlying library handle it using log4j. So that's one of the example that you should create a bill of material so you quickly know if there's incident affecting you, what should you do. So this is very important. And also long-term support. In some of the libraries or OS, open source software, they will provide a long-term support versions. Well, we always try to pick it like the most commonly picked or is Ubuntu, right? Many others understand using the .04 versions, which is known as the LTS version. So try to use the LTS version in case it can help you. But even LTS it won't be sometimes not long enough. So OpenLogic can pick up and give you a further longer support. Vulnerability scanning. So do regular vulnerability scanning to your code and your applications. It also helps you to find out any vulnerabilities. So OpenLogic didn't provide scanners. You just use the ordinary vulnerability scanners. But in case when you need to patch, you update, you may face some problems on dependency and others. So at that time, you may need technical support from OpenLogic. And when you have a CI/CD process, the deployment process, delivery and integration process, as I mentioned, you should have a code scanning, runtime scanning, and also here say you should also do the verify the package integrity, check the hash or others. It's simply one thing is important is you sometimes there will be more than one repository that you can retrieve those packages and software. Is that repository legitimate, or is that repository being polluted by hackers? So have checking the hash and the code and integrity of the package is very important. So there is some training and consulting service to help you guys to set up your whole CI/CD process to automate those checking and validations. You need not to do manually each time for every packages. That can be done from some CI/CD design integrations. And sometimes there will be unnecessary components, or there's some risky components in your software, in your library. It may didn't direct call by you, but maybe called by or your existing the library that you're using. So if there is a known outdated library, no one to maintain, so you should mitigate it and replace it with others more secure and highly maintained software. So at the time, you can consult OpenLogic to help you to find and give you suggestion based on that. And sometimes having an internal secured repository may help. Well, especially when you have a confirmed versions that it may use for your production or UAT environment. It really not necessary to pull those repositories from the internet every time. But you have to secure and maintain a local repository that you have to monitor also, so that you can secure it, you can make it read only, make sure the hash is correct, then you can have a good copy every time. Because it's quite scary. Yeah, if you play around Dockers and others, they will build a new server every time. They will integrate all the library every time. They download it every time. So you will never know which copy is good or not, right? So having your old internal repository sometimes is a good options. Okay. So what is the best practice for this 2025? First of all, do treat your open source software dependency as a part of your attack surface. because they will be really because they will really searching and targeting any of your repository or software that you're using in the internet. Continuous monitoring for the vulnerabilities and those risks or license issues is very important. So do monitor it and leverage the trust third-party support like OpenLogic and plan for the open source software for the patching and the EOL and managing. Yeah, so do response earlier if there's some software will be is known to be EOL, not just sitting there waiting for EOL and then start for looking alternatives. We should plan ahead. Then we will have enough time to switch over to find a good alternative for your open source software, because there's so many library, so many projects. Thank you everyone that contribute to those library. So we usually able to find a few similar project with to tackle your problem. So do plan ahead in case there is an EOL or there's a changes that you need to action. So let's secure your open source software stack today. You can book a free consultation service with us, or you can explore some possibility of long-term support from OpenLogic with us. So you can contact us with those contact information. In case you got questions, you can leave it here. I have a question here. So how can I check if my library is supported by OpenLogic? So please visit OpenLogic website. They have a software support list. Then you can search the package is that OpenLogic supporting, and it fall into which category, because they have a few different category with different pricing. Of course, it depends on the complexity of the library itself. So if there is no other questions, that's it for today. Thank you for your time. Bye.